Yeah, I can't see as well. My glasses, they're a little dark in here for a second. So they'll clear up in just a second. I know some of you are looking and they're like, what in the world is Scott doing? And I know that some of you are looking at me and they're like, I could carry that more efficiently than he's doing right now. Uh-huh. Yeah, I know who you are. I mean, Steve. Anyway, it does kind of look a little ridiculous, doesn't it? It kind of does. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate your honesty, buddy. It does. I mean, you look at me walking around with this stuff, and you think, something's not got to be wrong. He's up to something. Well, you called it. I'm definitely up to something. We all kind of look like this just about every day of our lives. You just can't see it. We all walk around like this just about every day of our lives. Maybe your load's a little bigger than mine. Maybe yours is a little smaller than mine. But we just can't see it. We got used to it. I'm calling it baggage for a good reason, right? We're going to call baggage. I'm going to put the baggage to the side here so you can stop looking at it. But I'm going to call it baggage. And what I mean by baggage, let me make sure you understand something. Baggage could be something that was thrown on you. Maybe it was a really trying time, a hurt. Baggage can be something that maybe came on with time, just kind of slowly built up and you got used to it. It could just be medical pains that you deal with. It could be very deep hurts that just won't go away. Baggage is the stuff that we carry with us each and every day. And my thing won't open up. It's looking for my face and it doesn't recognize it. Baggage. No matter how old or young you are, we all carry it. Be honest with you, a lot of our much younger people are carrying around a heavier load than we did when we were at their age. Yeah? Life's hard. It's getting harder. You know what I just found out? Just found this out yesterday when we were with the men. My dad there was like 4 police officers in our parking lot, and they came and said, but you're wondering why we're here. And it's because they're going through, because the issue of meth in our area has become less of an issue. Hallelujah. The problem is it's been replaced. Yeah. It's been replaced with a bigger drug, cheaper drug. Heroin. Yeah. Our youth, our young ones have more baggage than we did. Baggage. We carry this baggage with us. And I know if you get Dana's email, you have an expectation of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell you it's not going to be quite what you thought. I guarantee you. Because this is about taking up our cross. But today we're going to talk about maybe some of the things that might get in the way of us being effective at picking up that cross. Because if you're carrying around just those 4 bags, that's all I had was 4 bags on me. You're carrying around just those 4 bags. It's awfully tough to pick up and carry a cross, isn't it? That stuff gets in our way. And let me clarify something to you. I'm not here to tell you that it's an easy thing to deal with. I'm not here to tell you that it's something you should just get over with, because I will be the last person to say that to you. And I'm definitely not here to tell you that you should feel guilty about it, because you shouldn't. I'm here to maybe help give you some tools today, give you some encouragement, because guess what? Look around the room. We all have baggage. We all have deep hurts. We all have things we had to get over or are getting over, and we all need help in that. Whether that's family, close family, whether that's church family, which, by the way, I consider you guys close family. Whether that's friends or a stranger who just happens to have been there. Baggage. You know what we need? We need perspective. one of the things that we're really, really great at as a church, as not just this church, but just in general as a church, is we're great at digging into God's Word, and we're great into getting into the details and talking about how those details apply to us and why we should understand this statement better because we look at those details, and it's really important. Believe me, I'm not trying to put that down because it's extremely important to understand how to apply God's Word. But when we do that and we lose sight of perspective, we lose sight of the big picture. Oftentimes we use the word context. We miss the point of the story. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We need to get God perspective. We need to choose hope. Because what is our hope? Our hope's in? That's right. We need to choose hope. We need to choose the direction of hope. We need to choose His guidance in that. And we're going to use a story out of Genesis. We're going to talk about Joseph. If you have your Bibles, pop them open. I'm going to be moving quickly, though. So if you want to roll with me, that's fine. If you don't, it's okay, too. There's not going to be any notes up there for you today. This is way different than we usually do. We're going to start in Genesis, and it goes from chapter 37 all the way to actually chapter 50. So obviously, we're not going to talk about every little thing in between, right? We're talking about the overall thing. Let me read this first part to you. Genesis 37, verses 5 through 11. It says, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose, stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream. And he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream. And this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Anyone have siblings? So every one of you could already hear the way Joseph was telling his dream, couldn't you? You base it on what your brother or sister would have said, right? Your young one, I had this dream, all excited, and you guys were all bowing down to me. I mean, you can already see it going, right? You can see how it went down. Joseph was hated all the more, notice. He was hated before this started. He was hated even more after he told it. And he was hated even more after the second time around. They hated him. Joseph was the favored son. Clearly the favored son. We can all relate to this. We can all relate to being a little upset with somebody. Joseph was hated all the more. So time goes on, and his father, Israel, decides, hey, I need Joseph to go out into the field to go check up with his brothers and find out what's going on. Notice, where's Joseph not? In the field. The brothers are taking care of things. Joseph is not. Chapter 39, verse 19, still chapter 37. As Joseph is walking up, here's what his brothers say. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him, throw him into one of the cisterns, and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. Joseph doesn't know this. We know it because it's been recorded, right? They see him out there, and they're like, that's it. He's gone. We're getting rid of this guy. They have this discussion over this. His oldest brother decides he's going to fight for him a little bit and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't kill him. Maybe we'll just throw him in the cistern. What's the end result of that? Kill him, right? Now, of course, his older brother had a plan in the back of his head, but we're not going to talk about that today. So they compromise. They throw him in a cistern, and the next thing the Bible tells us is, and they start to eat. Does that strike anybody else as odd? Yeah, they just took their brother, whether they hated him or not. They took another human being, threw him in a cistern. Their intention is to leave him there until he dies. And they start to eat. This doesn't bug any of them. I mean, my stomach would be turning. They start to eat. This is God working. This is the craziest thing. They start to eat, and then opportunity knocks. They see a caravan cruising by, and they think, we can make some money on this. They do. They decide, let's make some money on this, right? We can make some money on this, and we don't have to kill him, so our conscience is clear. We don't actually have to kill him. So they sell him off into slavery. Those slavers make their way to Egypt. He gets sold again to Potiphar, captain of the guards. Pretty sweet deal at this point. He went from death by brothers, death by starvation in a cistern, to slavery to something unknown, to now slavery with the captain of the guard, who recognized his abilities, recognized his strength, his leadership. Chapter 39. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care, with Joseph in charge. He did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. He's in charge. Everything is under Joseph's hand. Joseph has now stepped up from being preferred son to being the manager of a household, the captain of the guard, which is a pretty big deal. He's taking care of everything, right? I love what it gets into next, though. Now, Joseph was well built and handsome. Okay, this is Bible talk. So if we were to translate that to today, they would say, well, Joseph is, thanks, wife. Joseph is a hottie, apparently. So Joseph is well built and handsome, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Joseph's mind is still in the right place. I got to ask you something. If you had been thrown in a cistern, a well, one of our wells, if you had been thrown left for dead, if you'd been left out in the middle of the desert, if anything like that had happened to you, somehow you got sold into slavery. Now you have no idea what's going to happen with you, but you know your life is not your own. And you end up in this other house, which, you know, it's working out to be a pretty big deal, but guess what? You're nowhere near your family. Where would your mind be? Angry. Would your mind be on the things of God? I don't know, maybe. I would hope to think that they would. Perspective. Need to choose hope. Here's a man who's been betrayed by the people that are closest to him, let down by the people who should have been standing up for him. Now he's doing well. He's still in slavery. Don't lose sight of that. And the one thing that he can't have, and he frankly doesn't want, is going to get him in trouble. Now, we all kind of know how the story goes. I'm going to give a really brief explanation. She gets more aggressive. Eventually, she puts her hands on him. He basically streaks because she holds onto his cloak. Yes, I did teach that to my youth one time. I said, Joseph streaks. That's the only thing they remembered out of the whole story was Joseph streaks. But off goes Joseph, right? And he gets in trouble. He, again, is saved by God because he could have been put to death. She lies. She tells all kinds of lies about how he came onto her and blah, blah, blah. I wonder if Potiphar knew there was something else there because he had him put in jail instead. But again, if you were Joseph, where would your mind be? Man, I was just getting built up. Things were going pretty good. I mean, I was still a slave, but I was in charge of everything. I could just, come and go as I please and take care of things, and it was all good. And then now I'm in jail. I'm in a prison for something I didn't do. For what? Because I'm good looking? I know many of us have had that problem, your good looks getting you in trouble. But, yeah, I was thinking of you, Brad. I really was. But that's where he could be. That's not where he was. Joseph actually, so they notice that Joseph has skills, and then he seems to be an honest guy, and he seems to be doing things. So guess what? Next thing you know, he's running the prison. He's gone from running a household to running a prison. And imagine the trust that comes along with that. If you're the guy who's in charge of the prison, and you've got a prisoner running the prison, I mean, he's got the ability to kind of come and go as he pleases in that too. That's a serious amount of trust and a huge responsibility. Here he is, he's running the prison, and you get these two guys that decide they have these dreams, and they need someone to tell them what the dreams mean. And Joseph comes into the picture again, and they ask him, can you interpret dreams? He says, no, that's for God. But I'll tell you what God is telling me. Notice where his focus is. He chose hope. He chose the way of God. I mean, he's been getting beat down. Many of us will get to this point and think to ourselves, I keep making the wrong decisions. I keep choosing the wrong path. I must be doing it all wrong. But not Joseph. His interpretation of dreams led to, years later, an opportunity to interpret dreams for the Pharaoh. His cupbearer remembered him finally. The cupbearer said, I knew this guy. So the Pharaoh had these dreams where there were these fat cows, and the fat cows were doing great, and all of a sudden there were these really skinny, over-the-top skinny cows, and they ate the fat cows, and it was just crazy stuff, crazy dreams. And he was scared, and he was worried. He wasn't sure what was going on with it. And they pull Joseph out of the prison. They get him cleaned up. They stick him in front of Pharaoh. How scary would that be? They stick him in front of Pharaoh, and he says, can you interpret my dreams? Chapter 41, verse 16, Joseph says, I cannot do it. Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Again, look at where Joseph's focus is. It's on God. It's 100% on God. Perspective. He's seeing it from God's perspective, not from his own. Because his own magnifying glass would, if he let it, would take him down the wrong path. You hear me? Come on, church, talk to me. So Pharaoh figures, this dude's got something figured out. I better put him in charge. Next thing you know, Joseph's in charge of all of Egypt. There's only one person greater than him. That's Pharaoh. And that's only, in Pharaoh's words, because of the throne. Joseph is in charge. They spend 7 years of this just over the top, great crops coming in. He spends 7 years taking those crops, storing them away, because they know 7 more years of famine is coming because of those dreams. They know it's coming. That's his job. This is a huge responsibility. Even 1 year gets off, and they are down a bad path. 7 years. You got to maintain perspective, church, because this isn't about Joseph. This is about Israel. Because during that 7 years of famine, eventually Joseph's family, the ones that sold him into slavery, wanted to kill him, all them, they needed food. And the brothers got sent to Egypt to get food. And there they are standing in front of Joseph. And Joseph is looking. He recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. And he's right there in front of them. And he sells them some food to them. And he asks them these questions. He takes care of them. It's kind of weird, right? The whole situation's weird. And then he plays some mind games with them. He gives them their money back, but they don't know about it. Now they think they're going to die. And now they got to go back and get more food. I mean, there's this whole exchange that goes on there. And Joseph is kind of playing with them a little bit. He just keeps playing with them and playing with them until eventually he can't stand it any longer. And he breaks down and he's crying in front of them and saying, he says, "Come closer, it's me, it's Joseph." And they're scared to death because they know what they did to him. They know what happened to Joseph. It was their fault. Genesis 50, verse 20. This is Joseph's perspective one more time. "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today." You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. God needed to get Joseph to Egypt. God had to find a way to get him there. Could he have done it another way? Absolutely. But his brothers hated him. And his brothers took initiative. This is where free will steps in. We can't forget that God works all things to those who are called according to his purpose. You make decisions that affect your life. Other people make decisions that affect your life, and vice versa. Joseph's perspective was on point. He followed God. I can't comprehend. I want to. I'll be honest with you. God's been working on me on this specific message since November of last year. I've known I was going to be talking about this since November of last year. That's kind of weird, isn't it? You know why? Because I'm hard-headed. He knew he needed to work on me longer. You guys are easier, right? You're laughing for a reason. We'll go with that. This just gets so much deeper, though. When you start to really look at the whole thing, Joseph's in Egypt to do a job, but Joseph's job ends up getting his whole family relocated to Egypt in some of the most pristine land that there is. Please keep in mind something that you may not realize. Egyptians hated shepherds. They thought they were the lowest of the low. So here come these shepherds, and they've got premium land and premium opportunity right in front of them. And they just got to roll with it. God needed to orchestrate the movement of a nation, or a nation that was to come. Perspective. Choosing hope. So how did Joseph keep it together? How did Joseph choose hope? How did Joseph always lean towards God? Because I'll be honest with you, I know I would have struggled with that. I know it would have hurt for me to try to do that. I think I would have done okay sometimes, but I don't know if I could have made it all the way through that. I read in, and I can't remember if it's the book If or if it was Circle Maker, which I've just started reading a little while ago. Mark Batterson quoted, actually, I think he quoted somebody else, but it says, "What if you prayed as if it depended on God and worked as if it depended on you?" Now, don't lose sight of what this means. See, some of you are going to hear that, and you're going to think, well, then I need to fix the issue. And some of you are going to hear that, and you're going to think, well, then I need to sit back. Like it's all mystical and magical. Please don't misunderstand me. God is supernatural and could do crazy, amazing things. but he wants you and I involved in the mix. He wants us a part of it. What if you prayed as if it depended on God, but worked as if it depended on you? Well, it makes more sense if you understand what the work is. If we put it in place. Let me read something to you. James 2, 18 through 22. But someone will say, you have faith, I have works. Show me your faith apart from works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is useless? Was not Abraham, our father, justified by his works when he offered up his son Isaac to the altar? You see that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works. I'm going to say something that you might not like. I'm just getting you ready. Prayer without action is hypocrisy. It's not an easy thing to do sometimes. It's not the most convenient thing to do sometimes. But we got to step up. So what is the work? Prayer. Numero uno. Prayer and worship of our God. It's at the top of it. Let me ask you, when's the last time you worshiped God apart from a church service? If you go back in the Bible, with Amanda and I were talking about this yesterday, you go back in the Bible and you look at when something happened, Jesus walked on water. What's the next thing it says? And they worshiped. When King David got called out for his misdeeds, he worshiped. They worshiped the Lord. When's the last time you prayed more than just a 5-second prayer, 5-minute prayer, 10-minute prayer? When's the last time you put more effort into that? I struggle with that. I'm not here to tell you that I got it together, because I don't. I told this to our man yesterday too. When we were there's a pastor that was our pastor up in Sacramento area. Love the guy. He's a great guy. Got a wonderful heart. He decided that he wasn't praying enough. You got to understand, his regular prayer life was more than most of ours. Okay? He decided he wanted to pray more. So he decided each day he was going to set aside time and build up. And he started with 15 minutes, then he went to 30 minutes and on and on and on. Next thing you know, he's praying for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. Can any of us sit back and think, what in the world would I say for 2 hours to God? We need to put in the work. Maybe the work is you spending time trying to understand what God's direction is in that situation. Maybe it's pulling up His Word and trying to look at things that might fit where you're at so you can understand how God works. Because part of the work is understanding God's nature. If you don't understand His nature, you won't recognize what He does. I'll give you an example, and it's a funny example, but I'll give you an example. So our granddaughter is going to grow up calling my wife Mimi, because that's what she wants to be called. Mimi. So everyone can, when they see Chrissy afterward, just call her Mimi. She'll answer. But part of their relationship, which is all Mimi's fault, is Lovely has figured out that when Mimi is eating, so is Lovely. Because Mimi's going to share. And it definitely, it gets her in trouble sometimes. It was last weekend or the weekend before, I think it was. Mimi was eating some chocolate. Lovely loves chocolate. And it was earlier in the day, she gave her some chocolate. And at that point, Mom, who's giggling, said, "That's okay, as long as it's not before bed." Can you guess what happened before bed? Yeah, Mimi was giving her more chocolate. So when Mom came to take her to go give her a bath, and there was chocolate all over her lips. It wasn't like she even tried to hide it, right? Chocolate all over her lips. Mom said, oh, I see what Mimi's been doing. She didn't even have to ask. She knew it was Mimi. That's part of their relationship. That's part of what's going on in their relationship. At work, it wasn't too long ago, some of my guys were having a conversation with some of our salespeople, and our salespeople said, well, we think Scott said, blah, 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 blah. And one of my guys said, yeah, no. They looked at him funny and said, that doesn't sound like Scott. That's not what he does. He would be straightforward about it. He came and asked me about it. I'm like, no, I didn't say that. That's what I said. He said, that's what I thought. Because he's taken the time to get to know me. And he knows how I would respond. That's what we have to do with our Father. We have to take the time. He is willing. He is waiting, right? We have to take the time. What does that mean? Does it mean reading your Bible? Yeah, absolutely. Another fact I shared with our men, there is a survey that's been put out there, and it was of Christians and non-Christians alike. And the survey was actually looking at decision-making ability. So what they compared was times reading the Bible to decision-making. And what they learned was anyone who reads the Bible less than 3 times a week doesn't make any different decisions than somebody who never reads the Bible. Come on now, church. That should be hitting you right about here. And I'm not saying that reading the Bible is the only way to spend time with God and to know His nature. Obviously, prayer, as we just said, is top, number one. Worshiping Him is right in there with it. Spending time in His Word, important. You know what else is important? Fellowship with other people that believe the same thing. Talking to people who might be able to help you through an issue. You want to learn God's nature? Go to somebody who's already been through it and came out the other side. Because it's easier to have perspective from the back end, right? 2020, right? You know what the work is? It's serving Him. It's getting involved in what He's doing. Whatever your talents are. No matter how big or small they may be in your eyes. Let me tell you something. One of the most important things that we do here is have somebody who greets. And we love Miss May, even though she abandons us sometimes through the year. Standing at the back there, giving everybody a smile, a hug, and a bulletin. We need more people who want to do the same thing. In my opinion, the thing that we can't ever lose focus on when it comes to the work is we have to be focused. We have to be ready. And we have to be available. Joseph was focused, he was ready, and he was available. He waited on God, and it was not easy. Can I tell you that this isn't a casual thing or occasional? It's putting in the effort. It's like working at work sometimes. It's putting in the time. You want to know God's nature? Then spend time with Him. You want to know His will for you in your life? Then spend time with Him, because you will see what He's been guiding you towards this whole time. You will see it. You want to look at your decisions in the past and you want to beat yourself up? Knock it off. All you're doing is hurting yourself. And I don't mean that to be an attack. I mean that to say, I love you. You're hurting yourself. You're holding yourself back from doing God's work. Choose hope. We need to choose hope, and we need to take up our cross like Jeremiah did, prophet Jeremiah. He was a complainer. Have any of you read Jeremiah? He was a complainer. He had good reason to be at some point. Listen to this. Jeremiah 20, 14 through 18, he says, "Cursed be the day I was born." He wants to curse an entire day. "May the day my mother bore me not be blessed." Goes further. "Cursed be the man who brought my father the news, who made him very glad, saying, a child is born to you, a son." He's going beyond just the day, right? Even the dude who delivered the message. Talk about shooting the message, right? Or messenger, right? "May that man be like the towns the Lord overthrew without pity. May he hear wailing in the morning, a battle cry at noon. For he did not kill me in the womb with my mother is the grave, her womb enlarged forever. Why did I ever come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow and to end my days in shame? You got to understand his situation. When he says this, he's in stocks. And he's been put there unjustly by one of his own for doing something that guy shouldn't have done. And he is upset. And he's making noise about it. And he does eventually get out of those stocks. And that guy does eventually pay for it, unfortunately, for him. We need to take up our cross like Jeremiah, that even when he was unjustly charged, he ended up choosing hope anyway. Yeah, we complain sometimes. Let me tell you, God's a big God. He can handle it. Choose hope and take up your cross like David did. Understand, what do we call David? Was a man after God's own heart, right? He did some pretty shady things. When it came time to worship, he didn't just participate or sit from the back and watch it happen. He orchestrated it. He stayed until it was over. You can read the Psalms and get a taste of what David was like and where his heart was. Any of them, just pick them. It's pretty amazing. We need to choose hope like Peter, who, in the very same breath almost, where he said, "Let me walk with you on the water," at the same time he was saying, "Help me, Lord." In the very same moment where he had total focus on Jesus, so much so that Jesus allowed him to walk out there with him, in that same moment he lost that focus just as fast and started to sink. In the same night when he said, "I'll never deny you, Lord, I will die before I do that," he denied him. And he was the same person that Jesus specifically came back to and restored him. We heard a little bit about that last week. When he put him in charge of his sheep. He put him in charge of the first church. It's a tough thing to take on. He's also the same guy who ended up dying as a martyr, because he would not deny Christ. We need to take up our cross, and we need to choose hope like Joseph did. Even though it always looked like he was getting knocked down, he still kept getting up. He still kept seeking God. He still kept serving God, even in a place that hated who he was. We need to choose hope. We need to take up our cross. I can never talk about this like Jesus, who agonized in the garden over what he knew was to come, but still decided it was so much better if he followed through for us. We need to choose hope. Matthew 16:24-26, this is the Message version. Then Jesus went to work on his disciples. Anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat, I am. Don't run from suffering, embrace it. Follow me and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to finding yourself, your true self. What kind of deal is it to get everything you want but lose yourself? What could you ever trade your soul for? Many of you recognize that more as you need to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. We need to choose hope, church. We all have baggage. We all have things that we deal with. We all have hurts, and it's not easy to deal with. We need to choose hope. I'm going to ask our praise team to come up. We're going to do something a little different with this time. You know, some people they tend to respond more in a visual fashion or a more physical fashion. I'm going to ask you to take your baggage. I'm going to ask you to drop it at Jesus' feet. So I know some of you would rather come up here and pray, and I'm going to offer that up to you. If you notice in your bulletin, the sheet had a bunch of lines. Some of you are more about the writing. If that's what helps you, I want you to take that sheet out right now and start writing to God. Writing about those things, how you're going to let those things go. God, help me with this thing. Write a prayer. If you're a journaler, this is perfect for you. Some of you, you're more about that individual time. And you want to pray, then pray. Don't even stand up. We're going to sing, but don't even stand up. Just stay there and pray. Just pray to God. If you don't want to come up here, that's okay. You can do it there. God hears you. And maybe some of you, it's more about just the worship. Maybe you respond more in the worship time and you feel it more. Then please stand up and just sing with us as we sing. We're going to worship God. We're going to get through this song. We're just going to enjoy. And I pray that you drop your baggage at His feet. And if there's something this church can do to help you, please come and tell us.
Draw me